And then this fifth area, which is all about amplifying the voices of refugees and immigrants. And through Suitcase Stories, our goal is to build community, to see the things we have in common, and to unpack or explore, as we like to say, migration through storytelling. So we are so grateful to partner with Moya, particularly in the last year. Your leadership and your support and your outreach to nonprofits like ours on the front lines, but all of the other people involved in this work has been tremendous, and we're very, very grateful. I want to say a few words about how tonight's going to go. We have 6 fabulous storytellers from 6 countries. Usually we'd be on a stage and they'd be backstage anxious. And I will say they are backstage right now. They've recorded their stories in case of tech problems, but we're going to have a live talkback at the end. So if you're interested in staying on at 8:15, you can, and you can ask questions directly to our storytellers because they're excited to answer to you from home. But I also encourage you, because they can't hear their laughter, they can't hear your clapping throughout the night, to open your chat, because they're on the chat as well, and send some love. If something resonated with you in a story, if you just want to say congratulations, anything you want, they would love to hear that as well. And it's good for us to connect in that way. So Yusufi, do you want to hand it over?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to again thank all the storytellers, and really want to thank all the attendees for joining us tonight. I really hope you enjoyed tonight's event. After the event, we'll post all of their stories on our website at boston.gov/immigrant, and we'll also include language translations of tonight's stories, so we hope you can share it widely with your friends and family. I'd like to now just take a moment to thank Mayor Marty Walsh for supporting this event and making sure immigrants have equitable resources to succeed. The mayor, as many of you know, is a son of immigrants, and since taking office in 2013, he has supported immigrants in Boston and just been an incredible advocate for immigrant rights. I'm sure you've heard the news. Mayor Walsh is President-elect Biden's pick for labor secretary. We're really excited for him to go make a bigger impact at the federal level, but obviously sad that Boston is losing him. It's been a privilege to serve as a part of his office, carrying out his vision, and the mayor has made a special recorded message for us tonight.
Good evening, I'm Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to our Office of Immigrant Advancement and the International Institute of New England for holding this special Suitcase Stories event. There's something very powerful about storytelling. Growing up, my parents would tell me their experiences, immigrating from Ireland to Boston, and what it was like leaving home and building a community here. That's why this event is so special to me. As a son of immigrants, I know how important it is to keep these stories alive and share them widely. The more we can understand each other's experience, the stronger we'll be as a city. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you to all the speakers for sharing their stories with us.
Thank you, Mayor Walsh, and congratulations again. Now, it's time for our storytellers. And I am so excited to introduce you to our first participant. This is a young woman who moved from Iran to Louisiana when she was young, recently graduated from MIT, where she studied brain and cognitive sciences. And without giving away too much of her story, I can tell you that she currently serves as an AmeriCorps member with the New American Integration Program out at Boston Medical Center in their Immigrant and Refugee Health Center. And I think it's worth noting that all of us thank Boston Medical Center and all of the healthcare professionals everywhere who are on the front lines of responding to this crisis and especially supporting refugees and immigrants, just like our storyteller is. So please join me in an enthusiastic virtual welcome to Maida Marzougi.
Applying to colleges in the US as an international student is incredibly hard. It feels even harder if you're not actually international. The thing is, I moved to the US with my mom and little brother from Iran when I was 6, a year and 3 months after my dad had already come here for school. My parents hadn't planned on staying in the US, but as these things go, 12 years and 3 PhDs later, we found ourselves in the same graduate student housing that we started out in at Louisiana State University. My mom started her PhD while my dad was still in school, and then when my dad couldn't find a job during the recession, he went back to school for another PhD. Going to school was their way of keeping us here legally. Double the money didn't hurt either, because a single $13,000 annual stipend for a family of 4 is tight. Part of how I dealt with the anxiety from our situation was by pouring myself into school, because it felt like the only thing I had control over. But when I learned that international students could get denied admission from all but a handful of schools just for needing financial aid to attend, I became even more anxious. Every year, my mom would say, "We're so close to getting our green cards. I think this year will work out." But it never did. So here I am, my senior year, trying to figure it all out. As an Iranian citizen, because of US sanctions on Iran, I can't fill out the one financial aid form online that gets sent to all the schools. I have to reach out to every single school individually to explain my situation and ask them for their paper application. That meant filling out 21 different forms that were all actually exactly the same, except for the name of the school in their heading. Throughout this time, Mr. Borders became my best friend. He was our school senior counselor. We developed a routine of me showing up at his office regularly to whine and complain while he called me out or gave me a pep talk, depending on what I needed. One day, I came into Mr. Borders' office more upset than usual. I was just saying something. A financial aid officer at one of the schools told me that I couldn't even apply because they didn't give financial aid to international students, which wasn't what their website said. So Mr. Borders called the college to clear up the situation and to politely shame them for being rude to me. "This is my valedictorian we're talking about," he said. And when he got off the phone, he told me, "Who cares about them anyway? You're going to end up at MIT." He was right. 6 months later, I committed to MIT. He knew I'd get in before I believed I could. For a few months, I felt like I finally made it, like all my parents' sacrifices had been worth it. But once I got to MIT, I continued to face barriers. I didn't have work authorization, and traveling was also risky because there was no guarantee I'd be able to come back into the US if I left it. But then my sophomore fall in 2016, when I got into a program to go to Germany for all of January 2017 with MIT funding, I was so excited to go that I was willing to take the risk of leaving the US. But then the presidential elections happened, and I decided last minute not to go. It was the right decision because the travel bans went into effect around the same time I would have been trying to return to the US. Experiences like that were disappointing, but the most stressful thing while I was at MIT was getting closer to turning 21, something most other people my age were really looking forward to. Once I turned 21, I'd no longer be dependent on my parents' status. Even if they got green cards, I'd have to wait for years to get it through them. For me, the prospect of being on my own with my immigration status was terrifying. My dream had always been to become a doctor, but getting into medical school as an international applicant is even harder than getting into undergrad. How was I going to keep myself here legally? Then one day, in January 2018, 5 months before I turned 21, I got a message from my mom on WhatsApp. It was a picture of a notice from US Customs and Immigration Services. Our petition for a green card had been approved. I was going to be okay. The first thing I wanted to do, literally as soon as I found out, was leave the US. So I applied to do an internship in Mexico for summer 2018 with MIT funding. Our immigration documents took so long to process, I spent most of the summer in limbo in Boston, unsure if I'd even be able to go. In the end, I was able to make it to the last 5 weeks of my internship. It wasn't the original 12 I'd hoped for, but it was better than nothing. I fell in love and promised I. So now it's February 2020, and I've just recently completed my degree at MIT. I fly to Mexico through the same MIT program to do a 6-month internship this time. Hoping to make up for the summer I barely got to stay in Mexico. But it's funny, because yet again, I only get to stay in Mexico for 5 weeks. When we first found out we have to come back to the US because of coronavirus, I was in denial. I didn't want to come back. As an alum, I was running out of time to take advantage of these kinds of MIT programs. And I wanted so badly to make up for everything I felt like I missed out on for most of my time at MIT, and to experience things that would help me grow into the kind of doctor I wanted to be. For me, spending so much time in Mexico in 2020 was a key part of that. My parents had always emphasized community and serving others, and having grown up both low income and an immigrant, I was naturally drawn to working with similar communities. I'd taken Spanish classes while I was at MIT, but I wanted to become fluent in Spanish in the real world so that I could strengthen my connection with other immigrants in the US. So it was really disappointing to have to come back. But the funny thing is, it wasn't as upsetting as when I didn't get to go to Germany, or as frustrating as when I almost didn't get to go to Mexico the first time. This time, there was also a hint of relief. I was used to anxiety and disappointment over things outside of my control. Even if I still wasn't amazing at handling it. But for once, it felt like most other people were also going through the same thing. It was lovely to watch MIT admin and alumni come together to provide resources for MIT students who didn't have plans for the summer. But I wish I'd had access to those resources, to those remote opportunities, where I struggled to find free housing every summer to support myself, since I could only do unpaid internships because of my immigration status. So in summer 2020, when I found out about my current position through AmeriCorps with the new American Integration Program, it felt meant to be. The position I was interested in would be at Boston Medical Center. So not only would I get to serve immigrants, but I get to do it in a healthcare setting. In this role, I connect patients to resources to help them navigate the immigration system. And on top of that, it'd be a BMC, a safety net hospital that serves a very diverse population. So now it's September 2020, and I've just recently started working remotely, even though I live a 20-minute walk from BMC. I can't see patients in person while they're at the hospital, so I have to reach out to almost everyone over the phone. And for me, talking on the phone doesn't come